Well, welcome everybody, thanks for joining me. I've got a video for you today, again on the Medeli SP4200 stage piano, also known as the Tourman SP5600 over in some parts of Europe. So I've got a couple of issues with this keyboard that have come up recently, so I'm going to talk to you about those today, and one of them happened a couple of weeks ago and another one has something that's just occurred today. So I've decided to do this video on the spur of the moment and just show you what I'm going to do to address these two problems. Now, as I've said before, the Medeli is a cheaper keyboard. Okay, it sits at the bottom, sort of lower end of the price scale. But having said that, it has some great features. I find it really excellent. I actually own 3 of these now because I find them, really good for what I use them for. As a home piano, you're unlikely to experience any problems just using this at home. But because I take this out on the road, it gets thrown in the back of my car. It gets used a lot. I'm pretty heavy with it. I'm quite a thumper on the piano, actually, I have to say. So, it does get a lot of rugged use. And this has lasted me 3 years. I bought this 3 years ago, and it's been pretty good. But now I've had a couple of issues come up. So the very first one I'm going to point out to you now is the fact that there's no power getting to this keyboard. If I try and turn it on, even though it's all plugged in and switched on at the wall, plugged in the back there, I'm getting nothing. Now, this is something that happened to me the other week, so I'm just actually showing you what I came across when I had this set up. I was all ready to go. I turned up at the place I was playing, and I was all ready to get started, and when I went to turn on the keyboard, nothing happened. Now, luckily I was prepared for that, because this had actually happened to me once before with my other Medeli keyboard, which I bought a couple of years before this one. And what it is, it's a situation where the power supply has failed. Now, luckily, as a result of having this happen to me once before, I always make sure I carry a spare one with me. So that's what I was able to do in this case. I was able to grab another one out of my car and plug it in, and away we went. So what I'll do is I'll just show you. With the Medeli, it comes with what's called a switching adapter. Okay, now, as opposed to a transformer or brick sort of power supply, this is a lot smaller and a lot more portable and a lot lighter. But I tend to find that I don't think they're quite as reliable. With the old brick power supplies, they just seem to go forever, really. They just keep working, don't seem to fail. But these, even though they're much more compact and lighter and all that, I just don't think they seem to last as long. So just be aware, and that's a good tip for you, is to just make sure you always carry a spare one, because obviously if this happens to you out on the road, you're going to need to be able to get the keyboard up and running, and that's when you need to have a spare one with you. So having said that, what you need to do is make sure that if you're going to carry a spare one of these, make sure that it's got exactly the same rating or slightly higher. Now, I'll explain that in a minute. This one's, well, the Medeli, the one that comes with the Medeli keyboard has an output of 12 volts and a current rating of 2000 milliamps, okay, or 2 amps. Also, the polarity there, if you probably can't quite see it, but in the camera there, but the polarity, if you follow there, it's got minus and plus, and it's got this little semicircle facing towards the plus sign. Okay, so long as the polarity on whatever the other adapter is that you're using is exactly the same, you won't have a problem. The other quick thing I'll mention with this is it's just a bit unfortunate that Medeli didn't invest in a longer cable to go with the adapter that they supply, because it's really only about 3 feet long. Okay, so that cable's just about 3 feet, and so it doesn't really give you much length in order to be able to plug it into a power point and actually reach the keyboard, and quite often you'll find yourself having to use an extension cord. So of course that's another thing, is make sure you've always got an extension cord if you're going to take this out on the road. Okay, so as I said, luckily I had a spare adapter, and the one that I had was this one here, which is, as you can see, is a different colour. It's white, which is actually okay, it doesn't really matter. The beauty of this one, though, is that it's got a nice long cable on it. Now, I actually got this from an old internet router, or internet modem, whatever you want to call it, but it came from an old router that I had that I was no longer using. And luckily, it's the specifications are very similar to the switching adapter that comes with Medeli. Now, this is rated at 12 volts, 2.5 amps, or 2,500 milliamps. And also, though, the polarity on this is exactly the same as well. you want to make sure the voltage is the same, okay? But with the current rating, it doesn't matter if the current rating is more. Like, for instance, if this was 3 amps or even, 3.5 amps, that would be fine. But you don't want it to be less, okay? So if this was just 12 volts, 1000 milliamps, or 12 volts, 1 amp, exactly the same thing, you would be advised not to use it, because you'd find you could have a couple of problems. One would be that the keyboard, certain functions wouldn't work properly on the keyboard, especially if you start using a combination of features on there. You'll probably find that things just won't work properly. The other issue is that you could damage your equipment. So the advice is to make sure that you use at least a 12 volt 2 amp switching adapter as a replacement, okay? So this one's absolutely fine, 12 volts, 2.5 amps. And of course the other thing is you want the plug to be exactly the same on the other end. That's about a 3mm plug, which is about 1/8 of an inch, okay? So make sure that's exactly the same. So I'll go ahead and plug that in now. Just pop that in the back. As I say, it's got a good long cable on it, which makes life a lot easier. And there you go, we've got power, okay? And I've actually since dug up another one, because now that I've used that one, that's my spare one, I then had to sort of dig around and try and find another one that I could keep as a spare in case this one fails. And that's actually this one here, which is just I think it's from some other charger which I had, some battery charger, but it's only got a very short cable on it. But this is just as I say, an emergency spare in case I need it. Okay, so that's fine, that's working, and that solved that problem. Okay, so everything's going and I'm happy with that. So if you need to buy a new adapter, they're not too expensive. You can get them from the music store. I could have brought one from the music store, and that would have cost me around about, I think, $30 or $35 New Zealand, which must be around about $15, $20 US. But, I thought, well, no need to spend that money if I've already got one which I can use. Okay, now today I came up with another problem on this, where I was actually, once again, I was about to start playing, and I could hear this rattle on one of the keys, and I thought, what's going on here? And I sort of knew what it was as soon as it happened, because once again, it is something I've encountered before on the Medeli, and it's this F sharp here. Basically, the key's broken. Okay, that's what's happened. All right, it's come away, and even though it still works, it's obviously rattling away there, and it's just no good. Obviously, that's how the other keys should sound. Obviously, they shouldn't be moving like this one is. Basically, what's happened there, that's just broken away from the bit that it attaches to, which I'll show you in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disassemble the keyboard, and I'm just going to get into the back of it and see if I can just glue that. Now, I've done that before on other keys on my older keyboard, and it's worked, so hopefully it'll work in this case. So what I've already done is I've taken all the screws out, and I've done this before in one of my other repair videos for the Medeli, so you can have a look at that. But I've got a couple of sets of screws. I've got another one just sitting on the bench which has another set of screws sitting in it. So I've already taken them out of the back of the keyboard. So having done all that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over, I'm going to disassemble it, and I'm going to get to that key, and I'm just going to show you what I'm going to try and do to fix the problem. So we'll just turn this off, unplug the cable there. Right, so all the screws, I've removed all the screws from the back, which, by the way, have got arrows pointing to the holes. Any screws which don't have arrows, you don't touch. So these ones here, you just leave those the way they are, but these ones here, you take out, and also these ones along the front. And you can, as I say, see that in one of my other videos which I've done. Right, so I'm just going to take this lid off. Comes apart pretty easily, like so. All right, and as you would have seen in other videos that I've done, there's a couple of ribbon cables which hold the main board to the actual key bed here. Okay, so we'll just find something to support the lid, because I don't want to really put any weight on those ribbon cables. So just going to pop that under there. That should just hold it there to stop it from moving. That's fine, okay. Right, so what I need to do is I need to unscrew basically this bank of keys here. So I've got basically my Phillips screwdriver there. So all we're going to do is take these screws out. So that means that we can just lift out that bank of keys there. Now you can see what's happened. That's the key there. I'll give you a closer look there. In fact, we can separate the black keys from the white keys. So if I actually take that off there. Okay, so those are the white keys. I'm not going to worry about those at the moment because they're all fine. I don't want to damage those, but I'll show you here. It's probably quite hard to see against that black background I've got there, but I'll try and make it as easy to see as possible. Okay, so this is where the key attaches, okay? And that's where it's come off. So it's just had a lot of repetitive use. I've obviously probably hit it a bit hard, and it's basically just snapped off there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to glue that back on with a bit of super glue, and we'll see how that goes. And if that works, we'll be able to put it back together, and we should be all good to go. Just while I've got this part apart, the other thing which is worth noting, because I had a problem, yet another problem, but anyway, that's the nature of the beast. I had an issue not long ago where I'd be playing the keyboard and all of a sudden some loud notes would start sounding. So I'd be just playing a couple of notes on the keyboard and then all these other notes would start coming through really loud, on top of what I was playing. And I knew instantly what the trouble was because it's something I have encountered before, and it's to do with when you get sort of dirt and grit and dust and all sorts of things underneath the keys. So what I did was I took it apart like this. I grabbed my vacuum cleaner and actually cleaned, just with a soft brush adapter on the end of the vacuum cleaner, I just sucked up all the dirt and debris, and that fixed the problem. So that's something you can do as well if you find that you get a lot of dust in here building up over a period of time. If you get inside here, vacuum all that up, and that should take care of that problem if you find that happening where notes just seem to happen out of the blue when you're playing something. So that's why it's always good also to make sure that when you're not using the keyboard, just to keep it covered. So just have some sort of cloth that you can put over the top of it just to stop dust from settling inside. Okay, so I've got this old tube of glue here, and I should just grab a bit of an old piece of paper. Probably not a good idea to do this over the top of the piano, but I'm just doing that so you can see what I'm doing. And I'll just be careful not to spill any inside the actual keyboard. Obviously it's better if you have a workbench specifically set up for this, but I'm a bit tight for space here. Okay, now if I give this a bit of a squeeze, we should be able to get some glue out of there. Yep, there's just enough coming out. Now I think with glue you tend to just put it on one surface and not the other, so I suppose it doesn't really matter which surface I put it on. I'll just put a couple of spots on the actual key itself. In fact, I'll show you that there, just on the broken part. Put a bit of glue on there like that. Match that up with the broken part. I'm just going to hold it there for a moment, just to make sure it's glued. This glue is actually a little bit old, and it may be that it's not going to stick. Now, if it doesn't stick, I'm actually going to go with plan B, which is sort of just to get a bit of tape and tape around it, which may seem a bit rough, but it might solve the problem as well. But let's just see how we go. The other thing you can do is you can swap this bank with another bank further down the keyboard, which is exactly the same. So another group of 5 keys, perhaps if you're not using the ones at the top end, you can swap them with this. Okay, so as long as you've got a group of 2 and 3 like this, which in the camera you can probably see at the top of the keyboard there's a group of 2 and 3, you could take those out and swap them around, and that would be fine, but of course you're still going to have a broken key up at that end of the keyboard, so it doesn't really fix the problem. But now I don't know if that's sticking. No, I don't think that is. So I think we're going to have to go possibly with plan B here. I just don't think that's going to go. And I have used this glue before and it's been fine, but I think it's just past its use-by date. And I suspect it's gonna, yeah, it's just gonna keep coming apart now. Okay, anyway, that doesn't matter because it's good to see that happening, because then we can show you what else we can try doing. Okay, in this box bag of cables, I always carry some tape with me. Now this this is probably going to seem a bit rough and ready, but sometimes you just got to make do. And I don't think you can get these as a spare part just off the shelf. So it's really a case of just having to repair and fix it the best you can. Otherwise, of course, you can take it to the shop and get it done properly, professionally, but this is out of warranty. I've had this for 3 years. This is going to be a little bit messy, folks. It's going to look a bit rough, but, you know, you've got to do what you've got to do. Okay, so let's just pop this around here like this. And it won't even matter if it's not fully secure, and you'll see why in a moment. Because really we just want to hold it in place. It doesn't have to be necessarily firmly attached, believe it or not. So let's just get this wrapped around. I'd actually prefer to use probably insulation tape, actually, because it'd be a lot easier to work with than this stuff. But gaffer tape or duct tape is pretty strong and versatile. So you can see what I've done there. I'll just bring it up to the camera. Alright, so it's that one there, you can see there. Just put a bit of tape round. That might actually be all we need. So let's just see how we go. I'll just pop that back into the... This is actually, this can be a little bit tricky, this, getting these back in, but I'll show you. Okay, so there's our bank of keys, which, remember I said before, if you've got another bank which is set up the same, so this group at the end is exactly the same. So I could swap those over if I was worried about it. But at the moment I'm just going to put it back to where it came from. Okay, make sure that tape is stuck down. And we've just got to try and get everything to sit back in place. Because these keys just have to hook under the frame there. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to give them a wipe as well, because there's actually a bit of grease under the key bed there, which is why I'm getting all this stuff over the keys. So I'm just going to wipe some of that off. Okay, now I'll screw that back down now. See, that's the key that I fixed, okay? Now that's actually okay. You'll probably find that that'll be okay. So even though it's not necessarily firmly stuck, because it's such a, you know, kind of a flimsy connection anyway, it doesn't really need much just to hold it in place, just so it doesn't move and rattle around. So let's just screw that back down, and perhaps we'll just give it a go. I'll probably just give it a test over the weekend before I take it back out on the road, just to make sure it's going to stand up. But I've done this before in a similar way, and it's usually been okay. As I say, I'm just a home fixer. I'm not a professional. I just do, even though I'm a professional musician, this is kind of part of the package, really, being able to fix my own gear and do my own repairs. Okay, so I've screwed that back down. See, that appears to be okay. I'm not going to try and force it or try and move it around or anything. I don't deliberately want to obviously damage it, but as long as that tape holds, which it should do, then I reckon we'll be okay. So let's just make sure these cables are plugged in and haven't come away, because you don't want to put it all together and then find out that the ribbon cables have come unplugged. So Yep, they're all right. And the trick with this is just, it's always a bit tricky when you close this, because you've just got to tuck these ribbon cables out of the way. And I'll just see if I can do it the first time. Even though it closes, sometimes it catches on the keys, so let's just test. Make sure there's nothing getting stuck. Okay, nothing's getting stuck there. Okay. Anyway, so that's the key there, the F sharp. That's the one that was rattling before, as you saw. And as you can see now, it's moving just like the other ones are. So that should be all right. All right. What we'll do is we'll just plug it back into the power and just check to make sure we're getting a good sound out of there. There we go. So, yep. So I think that's actually going to be okay. That tape, because it's quite thick, that's what's holding the key in to a certain extent. It's just that extra width on the key is what's keeping it in place. So the key's not going to fall out. Because of that, it's going to stay there. And it should actually just remain where it is and not start rattling again. If it does, I'll just have to get back inside, but I'll give it a proper test over the weekend. And if there's any more problems, I'll probably just give it another tape up. And could get some more glue, but I think that's going to be all right. Okay, well, so that's a couple of quick fixes for you. Hopefully that you find that useful. Have found some use out of that. If you've got any questions, just send me a message. And I'll see you in the next video. All right, have a good weekend, folks. Catch you later.